Hey guys, in this video we're going to be covering a game between Priyome 1960 and JD Cannon. This is part of the ChessGoals 30 plus 30 unrated team event that we had today, May 2nd. And JD Cannon is playing the black pieces for Team JD that you'll see over here on the scoreboard. Priyome 1960 is playing the white pieces for Team Birdsell. So we start out with e4, c6, knight c3, d5. This is the Caro-Kann defense, and typically here we see 3 knight f3. Let's pull up the opening book and look. Or 3 d4. So if you play 3 d4 here, this transposes into a classical Caro-Kann, and if you play 3 knight f3, this is called the 2 knights variation. JD has been practicing with the ChessGoals Caro-Kann repertoire, and he has this down cold. Like, he teaches me parts of the Caro-Kann repertoire, and I created the repertoire myself. We'll put a link in the description below. It's chessgoals.com/Caro-Kann for more info on that repertoire. But here, as the white pieces, you really want to play either d4, knight f3, or this interesting line, queen f3. I've had this played against me previously by a FIDE master, and it's a pretty solid line for white. So I think, Priyome, this is your first takeaway. I don't think it's very accurate to take on d5, and the reason for that is now you pretty much have to play d4. And if you're going to get into this structure, this is the Caro-Kann exchange structure, you really don't want your knight on c3. The knight's a bit misplaced here. Typically you want the pawn on c3 so that the bishop can sit nicely on d3 and then the d4 pawn is defended. So something to keep in mind is just a little bit of a move order trick. If you look at the book here, you can see that black is winning at a pretty good rate after knight c3 and d4 for white. Okay, let's jump back over to the analysis tab. So here we see knight c6, knight f3, bishop g4. This is a common theme in our Caro repertoire. You put the bishop out on g4. Next you play e6, bishop d6, knight g to e7. So let's see what JD does if he continues that plan. Bishop e2. So we can already see here it's a little bit uncomfortable for white. This knight is pinned, and this knight's pressuring d4. And this is something that we look to do in our repertoire as we try to keep poking at different weaknesses in white's camp, and oftentimes it is the d4 pawn. So black is playing for the initiative here. Bishop e2, e6. White plays bishop to e3. It's a little bit cramped, stuck between two pawns. h3 might be a good move here. I see the computer keeps suggesting it, encouraging this trade, because if the trade happens, then you do have the bishop pair, and if the bishop goes back, maybe at that point you could play knight e5 and just try to mix up the structure a little bit, because I think right now black has everything they want out of the position and it's pretty safe for black. So at some point here, I think white should look to mix up the position a bit, change the structure up. So we got castle, knight g to e7, h3, JD retreats. This is also kind of common in our repertoire. A lot of times f6 gets played, the bishop can tuck back to f7 with an eventual e5. g4. I like the aggression, but at the same time it does open up the king. I think h3, g4, Priyome, if you're going to play it, maybe back here. Maybe go h3, g4 before you've committed to kingside castling, because you still have the option of going queenside there. Okay, so bishop goes back to g6, a3, a6, queen d2, queen c7. One thought I had during the game, JD, is I kind of like the look of retreating this bishop and bringing the queen up to d6. But I think the way you played it was also very strong. I was just thinking, if you can get the queen in front of the bishop, maybe you could create a slightly stronger threat, because you have this idea of queen coming to h2 with checkmate, and then deflecting the knight is a huge deal for white. But I think the plan here is going to be h5 either way, trying to open up this rook down the h-file. So now from white's perspective, I think it's good to try to close up the center and block this attack by black, and also keep aware of potentially pawn storming over here if the black king goes queenside. Bishop d3, takes, h5, king g2. So here black has a pretty quick attack already. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of white's position. So if we go back to this point, let's try to think for a second, how can white increase their attack or shut down black's attack? I'm thinking maybe knight h4. I'm looking at the different engine lines. I see knight h4 minus 1.3. So the idea is, if h5 is played now, knight takes g6, knight takes g6, you could consider taking this and holding that pawn with the bishop. And here we can see queen bishop. We kind of wish the queen was in front if we're playing black. So knight h4 is interesting. It's a way to try to slow down this h5 break. And if queenside castle is played, now f4. We have this defended. And if h5, we're still going knight takes, g takes h. So kind of a cool idea, knight h4. I like that. Okay, so here after king g2, we have takes, queenside castle. Now the plan for white should probably be get these pawns rolling soon, but we also have to watch for threats from black. So let's say we play b4 right here. There's a very strong move for black, and JD used this idea in a few moves as well. It's pawn to e5, completely breaking open the center. And the reason it's good for black to break open the center here is because the black king is fairly safe, and if white takes, this knight comes into the game, removing this knight as a defender probably. And if white doesn't take, then black has the option pawn takes pawn or pawn to e4. So this e5 idea is very strong for black. Alright, so rook h1, queen d7. So I think the idea of queen d7 is to push e5 and queen takes the pawn with check. Knight a4, I like this move a lot, threatening knight b6, forking the king and queen. And we were actually commentating on this during the game, how difficult this was to deal with. Now knight c5 is coming. This, Priyome, this was a really good idea. This knight a4, encouraging bishop c7, which was a mistake, and then knight c5. Very nice counterplay. I like this a lot for white. Queen d6. So now we got a position where there's a lot of play for both sides, and this is where it's time to push the b pawn. b4, b5. Because if you look at your king side over here, for now everything is defended. This is where we really need the b pawn to push up the board. Get that counterplay going. Because from black's point of view, how do you increase the attack? e5 right away. D takes e. Let's say knight takes e. Knight takes e. Queen takes e. Yeah, okay, I can see how black is getting some pressure here. Probably rook h2 is threatened. This is tough. The computer's saying rook a to g1. I don't know who's going to find that move. There's also bishop f4 here. Very difficult move to find. I'm looking at the engine lines. Knight takes d3. We take this queen, and now it's a piece for a piece. They're both hanging. So let's just say, oh, knight takes d3 is better. Don't allow double pawns. This is equal. Even material. Both kings are relatively safe. So rook h7 is a tactical mistake. JD found the correct reply, e5. Knight takes e5, knight takes, d takes, queen takes. Double rooks. d4. Another very strong move by JD. I don't know if he saw this in advance. I bet he did. So what happened is, after queen takes e5, rook h1, this is a mistake because d4 is going to create a double attack. Pawn attacks bishop and queen attacks knight. But first, black has to deal with this threat. Rook takes h8. And in Priyome's defense, he's been very low on time for a lot of these last moves. And that could potentially be a takeaway from this game as well. Maybe try to play a little bit quicker in the opening. So after rook takes d4, I think the game was pretty much over at this point. JD played very well. So I think we'll stop here and just kind of recap. So one thing that we've been talking about in our Discord is different ways to analyze games. And one thing that has come up is the idea of doing chart reading. And this was something that I've been thinking about. If you want to quickly find takeaways from a game, you can do so based on the chart. So we know that white's typically has a slight advantage very early in the opening. So something in the opening here went from white having a slight edge to black having a slight edge. And it's this position here that we talked about. So even though this is a small thing, at the level that these two players are at, both of these guys are over 1800 classical ratings, over the board ratings. When you see this structure for white, you really want to go d4 or queen f3, that fantasy variation, or knight f3, two knights. This is the first takeaway for white. And then here I would say this combination of castling followed by h3, g4 opened up your king a bit, Priyome. Because we see black's king is not on g8 yet, so it's kind of easy for black to attack you. It creates this opening in your king side. But then right here, I think there's a very nice positive takeaway for Priyome. Knight a4, knight c5 combo. This is very strong. It actually equalizes according to the engine. JD, I think you have a takeaway here. 25 minutes on the clock. Use 3 minutes, maybe 3.5 minutes to play queen d7. This is something where you probably could have spent a little more time looking at white's counterplay. So you see this threat, but this is a very tempting option for white. I think you definitely have to be ready for this knight a4 move. So kind of watching for counterplay. Let's take away from here. And even here, bishop c7 was a mistake. If we look at the engine, king b8 would be stronger because now there's really no knight c5. Could take it off. You have this huge center. Okay, back to the chart. And then I would say, Priyome, even though we could call this tactics, the bigger takeaway here is the time management. So don't get down to 3.5 minutes. That will be the most useful because you can see these tactics. It's just you didn't quite have the time to calculate them all through. So the reason I think that this chart started to go in black's favor going forward was number one, because of the clocks. But number two, when you're low on time and your king is in danger, that makes it that much tougher to find concrete lines. So the fact that black's king is a little bit safer, plus the time management, really puts the odds in black's favor here. Alright guys, I hope you liked this analysis of Priyome 1960 against JD Cannon. If you liked the video, please click the thumbs up. And please click that subscribe button. We just hit 300 subscribers recently, which is awesome. But a lot of our viewers still are not subscribers, so we'd appreciate it if you sub to the channel. And if you want more information on being a ChessGoals member, we're doing a ton of live events now. We're really focusing on live events, analysis, kind of working through different study plans, talking ideas and how to improve. We have a link over here on the right, chessgoals.com/join. Go there if you purchase a study plan or if you become a patron for as little as $3 a month. You get into our Discord, you can join all these live events, join these other chess learners on your path to reach your own chess goals. All right, well, thanks for watching, everyone, and hope to see you in the next video.